This week we have our third story in the book of Genesis. So once again, I will commend it to you. The book of Genesis is full of all kinds of stories. And as the title suggests, it's a story of beginnings, but not just one beginning. There are lots of beginnings in the book of Genesis. We started a couple of weeks ago hearing about God making the mud guy and then breathing life, and he became a living being. We heard the story of a different beginning last week when Abraham and Sarah were the promise, the hope for leading this nation with lots and lots of offspring. There was only one problem. They didn't have any children at all. Finally, Isaac was born. Isaac married Rebekah, and they also struggled with infertility, once again threatening the promise. And then Rebekah became pregnant with twins. And they fought within her so much that she cried out to God, saying, "Why is this happening to me?" And God said, "You have two nations within you, and the older will one day serve the younger." So when the children were born, the first one was born, and he was red and hairy. And so they named him Esau, which means red and hairy. That's right. The second one was born grabbing his brother's heel, so he was named Jacob, which means heel grabber. That's right. See, you're playing along on this game. So heel grabber and red and hairy fought a lot, as you might imagine. And there was a day when Esau came in out of the field, and he was famished. He'd been working so hard, and Jacob had made a wonderful stew. And Esau said, "Give me some of that stew." And Jacob said, "I'll give you some of the stew if you give me your birthright, all that comes along with being a firstborn." Esau said, "Well, a birthright isn't any good if I'm dead of hunger, so yes, I'll trade you my birthright for a bowl of stew." But later it got even more complicated when their father Isaac was on his deathbed, ready to give a blessing to his firstborn, and Jacob lied and cheated and stole his brother's blessing from their dying father. Esau was none too happy about this, and he said, "As soon as our father has died, I'm going to kill you." So Jacob ran away. But don't we all know that you cannot run forever from the challenges and things you've done in the past? And we encounter Jacob now the night before he is to see his brother Esau for the first time since that last time. From the 32nd chapter of the book of Genesis. Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, who said to me, 'Return to your country and return to your kindred, and I will do you good.' I am not worthy of even the least of your loving kindness, which you have shown me, and your faithfulness. When I crossed the Jordan, I had my staff and nothing else. And now I am two companies. Deliver me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I am afraid of him. He might kill us all, me and the mothers and the children. Yet you promised me. You said you would do me good. You said that you would make my offspring like the sands of the sea that couldn't be numbered or counted." So Jacob took from all that he had a present for his brother Esau. And then he took his two wives, the two slave women, and the 11 children he had with all of them. And he took them across the ford of the Jabbok. He sent them across the stream along with every possession that they had. And he was alone. A man wrestled with him until daybreak. And when the man saw he could not prevail against Jacob, he struck him in the hip, and he knocked his hip out of joint while they wrestled. The man said, "Let me go." Jacob said, "I will not let you go until you bless me." The man said, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." The man said, "Your name is not Jacob. It is Israel." For you have striven with God, and you have striven with humans, and yet you endure. Jacob said, tell me your name. The man said, why would I have to tell you my name? And he blessed him. Now Jacob called that place Peniel because he said, I have seen God face to face, and yet I live. And as the day was breaking, he walked past Penuel with a limp because of his hip. And it's that reason that to this day, Israelites don't eat that muscle that connects the hip and the thigh. When Jacob looked up, he saw Esau with 400 men. And he took his wives, Rachel and Leah, and the slave women and the children, and he put the slave women and their children first, and then Leah and her children, and then Rachel, his favorite wife, and her child, his favorite son, Joseph, in the back. He went ahead of all of them, and he bowed 7 times as he came near his brother. But when Esau saw him, he ran to him. And he embraced him, and he fell on his neck, and he kissed him. And the brothers wept. Word of God, word of life. Thanks be to God. So I did a little free association with the word wrestling to see what would come to mind. And the very first thing was, can you smell what the Rock is cooking? So you know what era of WWE I ever saw or knew anything about? Well, I hate to tell you, for those of you who are fans, it's not real. It's pure theater, right? The WWE. There is real wrestling, and my brother was a wrestler in high school. We have a lot of wrestlers here in the congregation. A lot of our students are wrestlers. That is a very physical sport. It requires a lot of agility, both mental agility and physical agility. It's very strategic. You have to be very thoughtful about how you approach it. And then there's the kind of wrestling that I do most of all, which is the wrestling that happens inside my head. Sometimes this wrestling happens because of things that happen to us. You get a diagnosis, or there's a loss, or something else happens outside that you really can't put into any kind of context. So you kind of wrestle with it and try to figure out what your options are, where you might go next. That kind of wrestling. And then there's a kind of wrestling we do in our relationships with other people when we're struggling at work or we're struggling in our families. We wrestle and struggle through things and try to figure things out. And then there's the hardest kind of wrestling in all, the kind of wrestling when you realize that it's the consequences of your own actions. And now that I've been here for almost 12 years, you know, when I first came, I was just cleaning up other people's messes, and that was a lot of fun. And now it's my own messes that I have to clean up. Very hard. A lot of wrestling that goes on with that. All of these kind of wrestlings are true for Jacob as well. If you read the story of Jacob, and maybe you got a little taste of it even in the part of the story that we shared, but it is so theatrical. It is all drama in Jacob's story. Well, and he is very skillful as well. I think he's a very physical kind of person, and he's very agile and strategic in his thinking. And we see from his prayer in our story for today that he is wrestling with all kinds of things. He's wrestling with the idea of what could happen when his brother meets him the next day. He's wrestling with his own past and the mistakes that he's made. I think we often overlook that Esau had his wrestling to do as well. Because Esau was the elder. He was supposed to, he was culturally expected to take on the mantle of being the oldest and all that comes with that. He had his own wrestling to do when he didn't want anything to do with it. And in all of this wrestling, are we not wrestling with God too? Isn't that how it plays out in our wrestling? Is we're asking questions like, why is this happening to me? Or maybe we ask for peace in the midst of it. There's a lot of guessing about who the man might be that Jacob wrestles that night. There are some that say, well, Jacob said he saw God face to face, and that's why he named the place Peniel, so it must have been God. And I'm just going to say this. Jacob was really full of himself. Of course, he's like, you know who I wrestled last night? Well, and then there's the possibility that Jacob wrestled an angel. Or maybe some say he wrestled himself. It was just him alone there all night, figuring things out. But to me, the answer seems a little different and maybe more obvious, is that it was Esau. Do you think Esau wasn't watching Jacob come from far away? Do you think he didn't have spies paying attention? Do you think Esau did not know exactly where Jacob was that night? How like these two brothers, equally matched, to have it out one more time. But I say this also because there was only one person who really could give Jacob a blessing. It wasn't Isaac's blessing to give, it was Esau's. Only when Jacob receives the blessing of his elder brother, receives Esau's blessing, can he step fully into the promise that God made to him and to their family. Only with Esau's blessing can he move forward. Isn't this how it happens for all of us, that we can't fully get to that next place? We can't fully get to the blessing of the daybreak until we've wrestled through the night. Even Jesus, we saw in our gospel story, has that same kind of wrestling that night. Why would we expect it to be any different for us? We are never left alone in that darkness, but we are wrestling in preparation for whatever comes next, and it is the only way. So I want to leave you with a blessing. One of the blessings written by Jan Richardson. I've shared her blessings before. So do whatever you need to do to prepare yourself to receive a blessing. It's called Jacob's blessing. If this blessing were easy, anyone could claim it. As it is, I'm here to tell you that it will take some work. This is the blessing that visits you in the struggling, in the wrestling, in the striving. This is the blessing that comes after you have left everything behind, after you have stepped out, after you have crossed into the realm beyond every landmark you have ever known. This is the blessing that takes all night to find. It's not that this blessing is so difficult as if it were not filled with grace or with the love that lives in every line. It's simply that it requires you to want it, to ask for it, to place yourself in its path. It demands that you stand to meet it when it arrives, that you stretch yourself in ways you didn't know you could move, that you agree not to give it up. So when this blessing comes, born in the hands of the difficult angel who has chosen you, do not let go. Give yourself into its grip. It will wound you, but I tell you, there will come a day when what felt to you like limping was something more like dancing, as you moved into the cadence of your new and blessed name. Amen.